Welcome back to another Coach's Corner. So today we're going to be looking at developing a post-competition block. So obviously we know powerlifters, the end goal is to compete at a competition, peak for performance, lift the heaviest weight they possibly can, and then obviously we come off a competition. So what do we do next? Now we're going to go through Elise McLennan's program, and I've worked with Elise for about 4 years now. She was one of the nearly OG strength culture members from back when we first started. And she was meant to compete at her first nationals on the weekend just gone. Obviously with lockdowns and all that, nationals was cancelled. She was still able to do a testing in the gym. So we tested her numbers, she did her mock meet, mock comp, and now we've developed a post-competition block. And firstly, when it comes to developing a block, the first thing you want to do is have a phone call with your client. So have a phone call, establish their goals, what they want out of the program. So we do program notes. So I have a phone call with Elise and we develop some of the goals and outcomes she wants from this program. Now, one of the key things that she wanted to work on was a bodybuilding focus, a hypertrophy focus, and we want to establish how many days of training, so 4 days of training, and then which muscle groups. Really, I asked her if there was any specific muscle groups that she wanted to target. She wants just an even spread. As a coach, I'm happy with that, so I'm happy to just spread the work across the muscle groups evenly. In some cases, an individual will want a more targeted a program targeted towards a specific muscle group, so maybe we want to develop triceps and chest a little bit more, so we might have those spread across the program, 2, 3, 4 exposures per week, rather than just a 1 to 2 exposures per week, where that's what we're going to do with Elise, because we're just going to have an even spread of work across all muscle groups. And her goal is just to feel good and healthy again. We know that with powerlifting, you can get quite beat up, especially when you're doing highly specific training in 3 very specific movement patterns. You can feel quite beat up. Elise gets some problems with low bar, her elbows and shoulders feel a bit beat up. So if we're looking at day 1 of her program, we've put in SSB squats. So some variability, movement variability away from the low bar position. We've gone for a higher rep range. We've given her 6 to 10, working within an RPE parameter. So the goal is on set 1 to hit between 6 to 10 reps at an RPE 6 to 7, as highlighted here. So in this instance, we're not using percentages, we're just using RPE with a rep range to get 3 hard stimulative sets in weeks 1 to 3. And then in weeks 4, 5, and 6, we're bumping it up to 4 sets to increase the volume a little bit. We're doing the same then with the pendulum squat. So the goal with a bodybuilding style of program or hypertrophy program is that we want to mitigate as much fatigue build-up as possible while still getting as much of a stimulus as we can. So we're going to use things like the pendulum squat, where we can really pound the quads and get heaps of tension on the quads with very minimal fatigue. Because of the pendulum squat and the way that it works, you load up the quads with very little weight and you feel a sickening amount of tension and sickening pump in the quads. So we're going to use variations like that. A lot of machine work is going to be prescribed in this program. Whereas in a typical, say, specific strength block or peaking block, you're not going to have too many machines in the program. You're going to be prioritizing using barbells and being very specific to what your goal is to test your 1RM. In this program, we're going a lot more varied in the movements. So we can see on day 2, her main pressing exercise is the chest press machine. Not bench press, not a competition bench press, not a tempo bench press, but a chest press machine. Again, weeks 1 to 3, starting with 4 sets. As we head to 4, 5, and 6, we're going to add the 5th set to increase volume. Again, working in a rep range of 8 to 12 reps and landing on the RPE. So you've got 8 to 12 reps and you have to land on a 6 to 7 RPE. That means 3 to 4 reps from failure. Gradually, the RPEs increase each block until we're getting to a very hard set 8 to 9, which in terms of an AMRAP is 1 to 2 reps away from an AMRAP. So these sets need to be difficult, they need to be hard. So then we go into the pec deck, seated row, machine, rear delt fly, lat pull down, tricep, rope push down. So we can see this day 2 here is a very bodybuilding, building muscle, hypertrophy style program, not very powerlifting-esque. Now, the reason we want to sort of deviate away from specific powerlifting training, if you're anything like Elise, and I can vouch for this, I'm very similar myself, is that powerlifting training can sometimes get quite monotonous. And having a break where we're doing some different movements, using some machines that we don't normally use, some rep ranges that we don't normally use, can be very vitalizing. I don't know if that's the right word, but it can be very, can make you quite motivated again. So having some time away from specific powerlifting training can actually build up that endeavor to want to get back into powerlifting training. Having a break, resensitizing our motivation to train in a very specific powerlifting manner again, as well as build some muscle, which we know having a bigger muscle has the potential to produce more force, which is only going to help us in our powerlifting endeavors later on. The day 2, very, very bodybuilding style of training. We can see day 3, her main deadlift variation is a trap bar deadlift. We're getting away from the barbell, still putting in some deadlift work there, but with a trap bar. In weeks 4, 5, and 6, we've upped the reps, upped the sets from 3 sets to 4 sets, as shown here. And in the last set, we're doing an AMRAP, as many reps as possible. 1, because it's just fun. And 2, to get a gauge of her RPEs and see if she's accurately hitting her RPEs. So I've asked her to take her first set, here, set 1, the same weight she took for her first set for a AMRAP in the last set. And then again, very sort of varied movements. Flat dumbbell press is her main pressing variation. Again, not a barbell. Some direct tricep work, RDLs, and seated hamstring curls, with supersetting those to really just destroy her hamstrings. Again, not very typical powerlifting program, more directed at a bodybuilding, hypertrophy style of programming. So finally, her main pressing on day 4 is not, it's a barbell variation, but it's a hook lying bench press. So again, some movement variability. We're actually allowing the scapulars to wrap around the rib cage. When you're doing a hook lying bench press, if you've ever done one of these before, you're trying to drag the heels down onto a box that's at the end of the bench to get a bilateral hamstring contraction. This is going to help posteriorly tilt the pelvis. You're reaching at the top to get the rib cage back and down, get some protraction or wrapping around of the scapulars. And if we think about movement, this is it biases more of a flexion moment rather than an extension moment, which a standard competition bench press does. So again, one of Elise's goals was variability and to feel good. So this is why we've programmed that as her main pressing variation there. We then have a chest press machine again, just nice and easy. Machines are great for hypertrophy because they're fixed, they're locked in. There's a very little learning curve to them. You just load them up and the pattern is laid out for you already, and you can just push out sets as hard as you can. So that's why we've opted for a fair few machines in this program. So chest press, again, machine high row, machine iso row, and then just pound arms at the end. So again, very bodybuilding style of focus of training. Put some rest times in here just because that we are increasing the amount of work she's doing to keep the session length down, but also to get a little bit of a more metabolic stimulus there, get that pump, bit of a metabolic stress within the muscle. So as we can see here, this is how we've developed Elise's post-competition block. Main goals, variability and hypertrophy, and wanting to feel good. So as we can see, we've gone away from the barbells primarily, we've put in a lot more machines, and rep ranges are your typical sort of hypertrophy rep ranges of 8 to 15 reps. Nothing too crazy, nothing too out of the blue, but this is how I would structure a post-competition block. Again, this is going to vary on individual needs. This is why you have a phone call with your client before you write the block. 1, to assess how their competition went, but 2, to work out what their goals are going forward in the next block. Because some of my other guys that I coached for the same competition had a phone call with them, and their blocks are slightly different to this because their goals and needs are a little bit different. With one of my other guys, Ollie, that we did in the last video, we're doing a little bit more technical work with his sumo deadlift in his post-comp block because he needs some technical work with lifting heavier loads and a better starting position with his sumo. So we've kept sumo deadlifts in there. Whereas for Elise, goals were different. She wants to get away from the barbells for a bit, so her main deadlifting variation is the trap bar deadlift. So as we can see there, this is how I've developed Elise's post-competition block in accordance with her goals. Again, if you've liked this content and you want us to break down more programs of clients that we have here at Melbourne Strength Culture, please let us know in the comments below, or message us directly on the Melbourne Strength Culture Instagram page, or me personally at quantum_lifting. If you like the video, just give it a thumbs up because it always helps us. And as always, happy lifting.